All right, welcome back, Project Broker. Week three, the bonus. You guys, again, we were working on week three. I recorded the whole thing and I wasn't happy with how it turned out because it was just too much information. So now we're going to spend a little bit more time together talking about underwriting and packaging the deal. And so the three key components of underwriting when you're looking at it from a broker is to evaluate the current opportunity, then establish the comps for the highest and best use. And then based on those comps, creating a scope of work to achieve the highest and best use. So we evaluate what we currently have with the tax record information, establish those comps, and then create the highest and best use. And this is the same thing for underwriting when you're doing flipping or developing. It's the same thing. We can buy the property for this. This is what you can put on it, and it will sell for this. Then from there, the investor can help make the decision if we lay it out correctly to where they can go, this is profitable for me or not. Let's move on to the next deal or let's move forward with it. And so we're going to dig into the underwriting and how to lay out these deals correctly because the more thorough you are as a broker, the more you are going to get to quicker transactions and be able to have longer clients that really do pay attention to your deal flow. I mean, we all get spammed by hundreds of deals in our email box when you start, signing up for all these wholesale companies, and there's a lack of information. It doesn't keep your attention, and you move on to the next property. So we're going to talk about how to keep their attention and how to show them it's a good buy. So the first step, evaluating properties, we have to pull the tax record on the information. When people send me a picture of the house and they go, "What do you think?" I'm like, "I don't know. What is it?" And the tax record gives you the blueprint for what you can do with the property and what you can't do with the property. The first thing we want to notate when you're looking at the tax record is what is the finished square footage? And then what is the unfinished square footage that you can build into? Many times for properties, adding square footage in the basement or maybe the attic, spaces that you can reclaim will drastically improve the value of the home. That's how we do a lot of transactions in these more expensive metro markets. For example, in the city of Seattle, we can renovate and add space in the basement for about $110 a square foot. As long as I can sell that property for more than $200 a square foot, oftentimes that's going to give me a 2x yield on my investment, and that's where we create the margin. Many times we're getting $500 to $600 a square foot, so it makes all the sense in the world. It needs a lot of work, but the square footage is there. So the square footage is going to tell me what I can build out to. And based on that square footage, as a renovator, I can add as many bedrooms and bathrooms that will comfortably fit. It just takes money. And so the first thing we want to notate is what are we working with on the square footage? The second thing is what are the current bedrooms and bathrooms of the property? As we pull comparables, if we have a one bath property, we might need to add an additional bath, which we're going to reference in the scope of work. Or as we're pulling comps on the property, let's say it's a very cosmetic house that we don't want to do a lot of renovating to, we might just need a comp for a one bath property. And so the bedroom bathroom count will dramatically affect the value. It will dramatically affect the resale value. And it can also dramatically affect your rehab plan on what you have to add and not add. The lot size. Lot sizes will change the value of the home up and down, especially during the pandemic. Properties on bigger lots were sold for a huge premium. But depending on where you are, they have less or more impact. And you have to judge that with the comps. Is the lot size adding value, keeping it at par, or subtracting from the value? In metro areas where it's a lot more dense, a bigger lot's going to get you a huge premium. In addition to, you might be able to do more things with that property based on the size of the lot. In more rural areas, you could have an acre parcel and a 5 acre parcel, and they might not sell that much differently, but we need to notate because we want to pull comps in the area that have similar lot size or reference the other lot size to see if it drastically affects the value. The age of home is very important that we do notate the age of home because it's going to dictate the renovation cost. If I'm looking at a 1920s home, as I'm looking at a deal as an investor, I want to look for homes that are built in a similar era. But in addition to, it can dictate a lot on my renovating. A 1920 homes in Washington State cost me about $100 to $110 a square foot to finish. If it's a 1970s home, it might be $70 a square foot, which can drastically change my rehab numbers and my calculations when I'm looking at a house. And so the age of home not only tells you the era it's been built and the size of comps that we need to pull based on the age of the home, but how much the renovation is going to be. And it's important for your investor to know that. Parking. Parking can make a huge difference in the value. In Metro Seattle area, one car garage can be worth $100,000. Now, if in way more rural, a one car garage might be worth $10,000. But the amenity is there, and we need to find comps with the same type of parking situation in the area. If it's got a huge detached shop, we need to find comps with big detached shops. If the comps all have detached shops and we don't, then we might need to build it. It really does affect the value. In addition to, if there's plenty of comps with no parking, we might be able to reclaim that space and add more square footage to the house and increase the value that way. So always notate the parking square footage and the size. The style of home. Homes typically sell for styles about the same ranges, right? People looking for a split level house are looking for a split level house or a house that lives very similar, maybe a daylight basement, a tri level, but it will affect the style and the price of your property. Homes that are mid-century might sell for a premium. A craftsman home in an eclectic neighborhood might sell for a premium. In the style of home, we want to notate as we're looking at comps. The first thing we want to do is find homes of the same type of style because it's going to give us a very accurate data point. The zoning can, we always want to notate what is the zoning, especially as we're looking with the developer. Zoning can dictate a lot on pricing. A lot you can maybe that it could be zoned for density, a townhomes, and you can add 4 units to the lot, might be worth drastically more dirt than it is as a single family house. And so you always want to notate what can you do with the dirt? What is the potential in the dirt? Or maybe there's no potential at all. And so these things are important that we want to notate when we pull from the tax record. After we pull the tax record, we want to go on the street view. You guys, we always like to get a little bit of a test drive before we go out and drive the property. We put it in Google Maps, we look at the street view, and we want to notate what are the positive or negative effects that can affect the value. Getting on street view will tell you who's walking around the neighborhood, what your neighbors look like. Are there sidewalks on the streets? What's the infrastructure around it? Are you close to a busy road? Are you close to a power plant? Are you close to a school? These things can drastically increase the value. So we look at the tax record, find out what the building information is. Then we want to look at the street. What is going to affect anything that could change our comps? We don't want to go in and start comping the property right away without knowing the negative impacts because we want to be a lot more targeted as we're looking at the values. Reference those neighbors. Do we have good neighbors? Do we have bad neighbors? Is the property walkable? Things like school amenities and walk scores can really affect the value up or down. And so we want to dig into what the property is, what the amenities are there pros, are there negatives, and then we're looking at a clear picture before we dig into those comps. In addition to you guys, as we look at those negative factors, the last thing we want to do is send out a deal to a client and they're like, hey, this is next to a meth house. That's not good for resale. And we want to know this information before. Some clients have a buy box where I will only buy in great neighborhoods that have good neighbors. If I'm looking at the street view, it's going to automatically eliminate those people because it might have a negative impact. I might go find comps with a negative impact, but the client won't buy it no matter what. And that's okay. But I want to make sure I'm sending the clients what they want. And so always know what the big pictures, property details, where the location are, what the amenities, and then start digging in and establishing the comps. When we're comping homes, we don't need to get super granular on this. Some people get lost on the comps. It's about providing accurate information to the investor so they can make a decision. And we want to stick to a rule of thumb, similar to like an appraiser. But when you're establishing comps, the first thing we want to look for is homes with similar size, similar style that have sold in the last 6 months, because that's what an appraiser goes back for. Now, right now, we have inventories at all-time lows. Sales are at all-time lows. It's hard to find those data points. For us as brokers, we will go back 12 months in time, at least for us, and look at comps that are a little bit older, as long as the economy and the market conditions are the same. If interest rates have been flat and they're about stable, it's okay to go back to 12 months. And if you're not in a stable market, it's a much more volatile market, like homes are going up in value dramatically, hyper appreciation, or deflation where the values are coming down. You want to actually keep your time frames even shorter. Back in 2008, when the market was going down, we were using comps that were only 60 days old at best because the values kept going down. We didn't really care what it was worth 6 months ago because they were constantly adjusting. When the market was appreciating, we didn't want to miss out on deals. and look at comps that were 6 months old when there was a better data point that was only 30 days old because the values went up. And so, depending on the volatility of the market, you can go back 12 months with flat, or if it's very erratic, try to stick with 1 month to 3 months on your comps and really reference those pendings. Now, as I'm talking to an investor with lack of data points, I can go back 12 months and give them a logical answer. Hey, the market's been flat, interest rates have been about the same, the economy's about the same, it's the same general environment. And so we can use that value today versus the value from 12 months ago because they're very similar economic conditions. If it's a volatile market, hyper appreciating, we're saying we're using the most recent comps to stay in the game. We have to stay with the market trends. And so always be able to explain why you're going back additional or keeping it tight because the market in the explanation will sell it. And you guys, a lot of our experienced investors like to go back 6 months. We go back 12, we explain why there's no data points, but we found one here. The interest rates were actually higher. It was in a worse time of season. As long as we're comping back and the market was either worse or flat, it's okay to do as long as we can explain it. We always want to provide actives, pendings, and solds for investors on the property. We can grab a sold from 90 days ago, but if the pendings are lower, we need to explain why they're lower or that the market's adjusting down. Investors want to look at the whole picture. If you only send them one comp or two comps and that's it, and they don't see the whole snapshot, it tells them to investigate more, then they start getting lost in the data. And if they get lost in the data, they think about all the reasons why they should not buy this property. As brokers, it's for us to deliver that professional opinion and they trust it. And by providing the right information, they will trust the data a lot better. Use similar locations or lesser locations and never comp up to establish a neighborhood. So as we have a lack of comparables and a lack of data, we will go out further than our normal distances. Maybe in a metro, we stay a quarter mile. We might go half mile, maybe even a little bit further, as long as we know that that area is worth a little bit less. And if we find a very fixed up house in that area, we can feel good that our property should minimum hit that price because we're in a better location, better locations being bigger pricing. But what we can't adjust for is if we're comping up into a more novelty neighborhood. If I'm going into a better area, there could be a price tag we don't know. Someone could spend dramatically more money on half the house just because of where it is. And so always comp down, but never comp up. And it allows you to kind of establish those data points. But remember, guys, get them the actives, the pending, the souls, give them that information and give them the information for the scope of work that you're presenting to them too. I don't need to pull comps that are estate sale and dated if I'm telling them to do a massive renovation. We want to give them the scope of comps that match the scope of work that we're referencing. That's the important part. Now, other value references that you can use as a broker, especially in the development side, is the price per square foot. Now, in renovations, price per square foot can vary a lot more. We use that as a reference point, but we don't really put values on it. Homes that are smaller sell for a certain price per square foot. It depends on how much updates they have. What kind of hardscapes do they have? But with new construction townhomes and new construction properties, oftentimes they have a very similar price per square foot. And so when we are comping for development, we do add in price per square foot per units based on what they are building. Properties with equal novelty. If I have a killer view on a property and I don't have any in the neighborhood, I might go into a couple different neighborhoods and show that the premium that it got by having that same sweeping view. I then can show them the delta between a house in the neighborhood that had a view, that didn't have a view, and show them what kind of premium was paid. This is often, you guys, when you're working in a little bit more luxury markets, views can make a huge difference. They're also in high demand, so there's not a lot of comps or people don't sell them a lot. And so you have to kind of find similar type of properties and then make adjustments based on location. As is comps are a great reference point. What can you buy this property for? And if you were just to clean it out and list it today, what is it worth? If there's a walk-in margin where someone is buying a property, let's say for 300,000, and all the comps in the same condition are selling for 350 in the area, an investor can go, this is great value. I'm buying it below market value, even as a fixer. And so oftentimes adding in as is comps, showing that they're getting a good price will help them pull the trigger faster. So there aren't ways to establish the value, but there are ways to help investors interpret it so they're different reference points. Now, once you've gone through the comps and you pulled these comps and you're saying, okay, what is selling for the most? We need to reference what those upgrades are and create the scope of work for the investor to make. Now, as a broker, this does not mean we need to be as detailed as we go over the scope of work and project flip and how you do it as an investor. But the investor does need to know what they need to do to that property to optimize the value. Then it's up to them to judge the price of the renovation and whether they can make a margin or not. So establishing the scope of work, you need to know what the upgrades are. Go through the comps. What do the comps have? What kind of cabinets do they have? Countertops, flooring, doors, trim, windows, roofs, and bullet point what those homes have that your property does not. We need to know the bedroom and bathroom count and where those spaces are. Does the home have a primary bath? Does that investor need to add that primary bath? Is it currently a one bath and they have room to add 2 more bathrooms and it will increase the value $250,000, then it makes sense. And so, what is the current bedroom bath count? What is needed to optimize the value that helps the investor budget? What amenities do you need to add to this to create the value? Does the comp have a big oversized deck? Does it have a gazebo? Does it have a paver patio? Does it have a sports court? Anything that comp has that we are saying is the new value, we need to put on the scope of work because we need to deliver the same product to achieve the same pricing. The quality of renovation. Is it a luxury renovation where they're all wood grain cabinets? They have hardwood floors throughout. They have premium luxury appliances throughout. Does the bathroom have body sprayers, heated floors, shower heads? It's up to us as brokers to go through those upgrades and find out what it has and what it doesn't have and bullet point it accurately. The last thing we want to do is sell an investor a deal and tell them it's worth X dollars. And they do a renovation and they take it to 80%, but they forgot the oversized shower with heated floors and rain heads and body sprayers. And they forgot to epoxy the garage floors, all these little extra add-ons that help get that comp, that premium price. And the investor can't move it because they're missing some of those amenities. It's all about copying those comps. Whatever's on those comps that we're saying is the value, it needs to be bullet pointed out for the investor so they know what they need to do. What's the level of finish? Does it have smooth wall throughout? Does it have all new siding throughout? Does it feel more new construction like? Or is it more a restored house that's been painted, it's been resurfaced, it's been repaired, and it's been put back together? Then lastly, what other finished space do we need to create? Do we have 1,000 square foot upstairs and we need to add 1,000 square foot in the unfinished basement to get a 2,000 square foot house? Do we need to convert the garage? What livable square footage do we need to achieve to hit the same price point? You need to be very similar. You guys, homes that are selling, if it's a 2,000 square foot house, homes that are 18 to 2,200 square feet are going to trade in roughly the same as long as they have the same amenities in layouts. Now, homes that are 1,500 square feet versus 2,000 square feet, that's going to be a dramatically different price. And so, do we need to add space to it? Do we need to do an addition? Do we need to finish the basement? Do you need to finish the attic? Do you need to turn the garage into a man cave? It's all based on the comps, not based on your opinions. Brokers do not need to establish the cost for rehab that is the client for them to define. We need to give them the list of items that need to be done, but the client ultimately needs to put that price on it. Clearly state what the property needs to get the property's highest and best use, and then add an estimated cost to help evaluate profit. As brokers, you don't need to know how much it costs, but you can ballpark some estimates for the client. And you don't need to say this is an exact number. You can say, hey, we think that this cost about this from what we know from our other clients or past projects. How we help that client kind of make a decision is to use the tools that we provided you with. So you guys, as you have access to this toolkit, you have a scope of work checklist. It's not a detail that plans out their whole project. It's a list of when you walk that property or go through the photos, what needs to be done. And so the list is very organized. It keeps it simple to provide it for your clients so they have a hit list. And for you as a broker, it reminds you to look at every little item. Are you walking it and the gutters are blown out? Check one. Are you walking it? And the front porch needs a new soffit, front post, craftsman style. Check it. Does it need new windows? Does it need new plumbing? You can go through, and this list will help you guide you through that project of just what you think it needs based on the comps that you have. Now, to help you guys understand the rehab, again, you don't need to run a whole budget, but it does help to give the investor a ballpark price, especially if they're a newer investor. Now, in our training videos, I broke down how to use our budget calculator. Now, as a broker, you can learn this, you can build it, and you can create your own budget for a property. But there's also the underwriting tab. The underwriting tab is a less exact rehab number, but it ballparks and itemizes out big items. So as you can see in this, here's a little screenshot of it. And you guys watch the video, watch the training, and we'll show you exactly how to do it and make your adjustments. But for example, on this property, we're looking at an 1,850 square foot house. We can say as a broker, like, hey, right now we budgeted in 20 bucks a foot for cosmetic renovation. That's going to cover your millwork, your doors, your paint, your just general updates on the house. And then we added in $10,000 for a kitchen. We had 2 bathrooms at $5,000 each. We added, we had windows at 10,000, roof at 15,000, electrical at $5 a foot for a full rewire, plumbing $5 a foot, decks, HVAC $5 a foot, and it gives them a rough estimate of what the property is going to cost. Now, again, it's up to the client to really dictate those numbers, but what the purpose of this calculator is for you guys to kind of run this through and go, wow, if we buy it for this, we sell it for this, and we put this rehab in just to give me a ballpark, the client doesn't have any profit in the deal. And even if the client got this deal done for 20% less than what this totaled out for, it still not might be a buy. And so we'll give you a gauge on what to pursue and what not to pursue, and to where you should estimate, look at the strike price. By going through this, it allows you to also not send it out to clients and waste their time. Because if we send clients too many bad deals, they start ignoring us and the client's gone, the relationship's dead. And so it gives you a guide on how to judge the rehab. You can make your own adjustments for your market. If you're in maybe Arkansas, where my good buddy Henry Washington works, his average kitchen cost, I think, it's like $6,000, not 10. You can adjust those down for the type of properties you're looking at, and it gives you a rough blueprint to look at as a broker to know what the offer price should be, but also to give your client just a little bit of guide on how you kind of came up with that number. So again, watch that video, break down the training. It teaches you how to do it. So now that we've kind of gone through the basics of underwriting, right? Looking at the tax record, what are we working with? What's the potential? What's the potential in the lot? What's the potential in the house? What can we build into? Then we pull the comps for the property of similar square footage. How much can I build into it? Then take those comps, create the scope of work that is our core broker underwriting. Now, to get more granular on the underwriting, as far as investors do, we take it quite a bit steps further. We're going to dig into those comps. What is it going to cost us to renovate that property? What's the time of permits that are going to take? To get more granular and to see where the investor perspective, I want you to go to Project Flip and look at the underwriting section. The underwriting section will put you in their seat and get even more granular. Now, as brokers, you guys, we can overthink it, and we don't want to overthink it, but we want to give our clients a good blueprint. Now, once we have this information, we now have an opportunity that we can look at to get over to our clients. So as we find this opportunity, we have what it is, what it will sell for, and what needs to be done. There's other factors that go into the deals that will dramatically affect the profit from an investor. Now, unless you're an investor broker yourself, you don't know those costs as well. Now, if you are an investor, you can allocate your cost into the deal and say, this is kind of what I've paid, and that makes sense. That's an answer. But if you don't know what those costs are, that's okay. We can use a pro forma on a cash basis, and then the investor can put in their other expenses and go over it with you. Investors have different leverage costs. And as a broker, we don't know if they're running this deal on cash. Are they writing a check for it? They have no hard money costs. Are they borrowing their money at 25%? Are they borrowing it at 12%? We don't know. But what we can do is go, hey, on a cash basis, this is a good deal. Now it's up to the client to put the right leverage on it to execute on it. Now, one tip for this is you can always reach out to a hard money lender in town. Those are those people that you want to network with, you want to resource with. I'm a broker looking for investment properties and off-market deals. Can I work with some of your clients or hard money lenders to dispo those deals? But also, you can pair up a deal or present an opportunity to your clients with hard money lenders in your back pocket. We're going to talk about this more in week 4, the closing one, about building that business, that referral resource, and those extra little kickers that'll help you transact more, right? Setting up the financing for a client will really help them. But in the meantime, we have to run these deals on a cash basis and then allow the clients to factor their leverage. Time can dramatically affect a deal, especially if they're using leverage. Now, as a broker, you don't need to know how long permits take. That's for the investor to dig into. But you can look at on somewhat of a semi-annual basis or annual basis when you're looking at a deal. If I'm selling a client where they have to build a project, I know it's going to take them longer than a year. If I'm selling them a really old house, it's typically going to be 6 to 9 month deal at best. Typically actually 9 to 12. If it's a cosmetic deal, it could be a 4 month deal. But you don't need to know the time. You just need to reference what it is to the investor. Hey, this is a major renovation on an old craftsman home that you can bring back to life, but everything needs to be done. Here's the scope of work. Or this house is in great shape. It needs carpet, paint, countertops, appliances, get it back to market. It should be a very quick project. Those are the code things to say. If you don't know what the time frame is, stick with those. As a broker, it can be, in your interest to know how long things take, but really just tell the client what they need to be prepared for and they can educate you. Now, as you talk to your clients and they go, hey, this is going to be a really long permit. I might need the deal this way. That's where you can start educate yourself and really start narrowing down those timeframes. The quicker the deal, the higher the annualized profit. So if you have a more cosmetic fixer, an investor will be okay with a smaller profit. We talked about this in week 1 about annualized return, or we talk about in Project Flip. What is your buy box? What kind of return are you trying to make in a certain time frame? The quicker the deal, the more return you can make, and people will take a smaller profit. The bigger the deal, people are going to want a bigger profit because there's more risk and it takes a lot longer. And so, depending on the condition and what you're bullet pointing out, the more bullet points you have on your scope of work, just know you need to get a deeper margin. If it's a very cosmetic, easy project, the investor can buy it at a slimmer margin. And so again, you guys, I want you to watch Project Flip underwriting section because it really breaks it down and you want to get inside what your clients' minds are thinking. As a investor broker, I go through the same pains as all flippers. So when I'm selling a deal, I can go, oh, this deal could have this headache, this deal could have this headache. And because I know it well, I can sell a little bit better, right? A salesperson that knows their product can always sell better. The reason we started Project RE, the academy, was to give you the all-encompassing training for flippers, for wholesalers, for private money lenders, for brokers, for rental buyers. The more you understand it, the more you can execute on it. And that's why we have this huge academy over a year period with all the education. It is in your best interest, guys, as brokers, to watch all of those courses because the more you understand about financing, wholesalers, flippers, the more lethal you will be as a salesperson because you understand their needs. So a lot of those numbers are numbers the investor has to come up with. What's their borrowing cost? How long is it going to take? And they can give you feedback on it. But you can kind of judge it based on the investor or as a broker, and that's what we're trying to do. But the key components as a broker that you do need to know are the things that are always fixed. What's the purchase price? We can buy this property today, and here's your total cost basis. Then we can come up with an estimated rehab cost by client feedback or using the underwriting calc just to throw in a number to ballpark the profitability. If you don't have that, that's okay. Leave the rehab 0 and you can send them out a pro forma and say, based on the scope of work, plug in your rehab number or ask the client what they think it would cost, then plug it in and then send out the pro forma. We like to use our underwriting calc because it's fairly accurate. We've adjusted it to our market conditions by doing the research and client feedback. And typically it's a little bit on the high side so the client can come under on the budget. So if you want to be a little bit more accurate, use the rehab calc, budget it that way. If not, get feedback from your client on price per square foot, and you can kind of put it in that way. Other costs that we do know, though, is what's their sale cost? Is there a transfer tax? Is there real estate commissions? We can factor those all in the pro forma and then break it down for the client. And then what is the holding cost? That's more up to the client. But the holding cost we do know outside of leverage is they have to pay property taxes. They have to pay utility costs. They have insurance to cover the building. Put in the information that you know, so then that way, if the client has any kind of variable financing or variable costs, they can input it themselves and make their own decision. We also need to have the key sum of total values to calculate profit. If I renovate this house with this scope of work, what is it worth? If I have this piece of land and you can build 4 townhomes of this size, what is the combined value of those townhomes? Once we have those combined values, we put them in our pro forma, and then we can calculate the return, and returns on cash basis or return on leverage if it's factored. Now, the nice thing about our pro forma is you can put it in with no leverage, and then the investor can backfill it in and they can look at their true cash on cash return. We know in our market, if we have a deal with no leverage in there that's factoring around a 14 to 15% cash on cash return in our calculator, it equates typically out to about 35 to 40% if you use leverage. So when we're looking at deals, we're not looking at them with a hard money goggles. We're just saying, does it hit a minimum of a 14% cash on cash return before leverage? If it does, it's a qualifier to write an offer, and we move forward with that project to try to keep it moving forward. So now what we're going to do, because I just kind of talked about a lot on the pro forma, is I'm going to pull up a pro forma and we're going to go through it so I can walk you through it. So here's our pro forma that comes in your guys' toolkit. This is something you guys can send out to your clients with a rough evaluation. So in this pro forma, and you guys, again, in our instructional videos, it shows you how to use them per pro forma and calculator. So I want you to watch those. But as we're going through a client, we can look at, okay, well, we're looking at a deal. And let's say the deal, we can buy it today for $625,000. We have pull comps for the property, and this house could sell up to $900,000 with a scope of work that we created. How many? We added bedrooms, we added bathrooms, all the amenities. Now, based on our estimated rehab calculator during the underwriting, it kicked out a number around 100,000 for the bullet points that we came up with. This calculator is going to factor in hard money, the cost, or not. So if you want to run it with cash, you would put a down payment at 100%. That means the client's just paying 100% of that property. Everything's out of pocket. It then will come through and calculate the purchase price, the rehab costs. Total base is $725, nothing in the promissory amount, and then the direct costs then are factored out. These are the costs that we can account for outside of leverage. We know that they have a $625 purchase, they have a $100,000 renovation. There's roughly $1,500 when they bought the deal for acquisition. They have real estate property taxes. We go through the tax record. It tells us the property tax information, gives us our monthly fee. We input that. We have insurance roughly for the property of what it could cost. And then utilities estimated $100, $200, depending on where your location are. Then we back out the sell cost in our market. Standard is 6% commission, 3% for our list pack, 3% for the other broker, or maybe it's even 5.5 nowadays, where they're doing 2.5. It will factor for that. And then any kind of transfer tax in this area, 1.78. And then staging. And then any other type of closing costs can be changed in this section too. Let's say we have another $2,500 in closing costs. So at this point, we then it backs out the selling cost, the direct cost, and it tells us our estimated profit. But one of the key components when we're selling to an investor is, hey, we got a property that you can buy for $600,000. You can put $100,000 or $625,000. You can put $100,000 into the renovation, and after you back out all costs except for leverage, there's $97,000 in profit, which is a 13% return on cash. That means the investor is investing $734,000 right here after all costs. They sell for 900, they're walking with 97. That is a 13% return. The investor knows exactly how much they got to come out of pocket with in a 6-month period, which would be a 26% annualized return. Now, the investor then can go, okay, that sounds pretty good. Or as a broker, I can go, okay, well, this hits our minimum at 13%. An investor might take on leverage and they say, well, I'm only going to put 15% down. Maybe they have 2 points and a 12% interest rate for the hard money. The investor then can adjust it, or if you get it pre-qualified with a hard money lender, you can put those rates in, and then it's going to make those adjustments. And now they went from 97,000 down to 47,000, but their cash on cash return went from 13% to 31%. And so the purpose of the calculator is to provide the information to where the investor can then input their own cost and really look at the profit, and you're backing out all the other direct costs, but it also will tell them what the return is. And so when I'm talking to an investor, I'm saying, hey, you can buy this for 625. You put 100 in, you sell it for 900 after all costs. If you're in cash, it's a 13% cash on cash return in 6 months, or 20%, 6% annually. If you use leverage at 85%, your cash on cash return goes all the way up to 31% with standard hard money rates, which would be a 62% annualized return, which is a great investment. Where can you get 62% anywhere else? And so use the pro forma, input it, and then go over it with the client to help them make a decision. But we're always focusing, yes, on net profit, but the cash on cash return. You're making 31% in a 6-month period, which is higher than where you're going to get most other places. In addition to, you always want to make sure that you have a copy of the disclaimer that we have listed out for you guys. Change the disclaimer out to cover yourself that this is not an actual projection. This is a rough pro forma. That is very, very important. We've talked about this a lot throughout the Project Broker, over disclaim. So the profit calculator helps the client look at it quickly and make a decision. And so the more you get comfortable with that calculator, play with those rates, talk to hard money lenders, input them in. What can you get this deal pre-qualified for? What are lenders lending in your area that you can help the client get financing for? It shows them the profit, it shows them the return, which makes them make a decision. I can tell you, if someone calls me up and goes, hey, do you want to make 30% on your money in 6 months? I'm going to listen. If I send out something and go, hey, what do you think of this property? I might be busy and I'm not going to look at it. And so for you as a broker now, by looking at the projections, you can say, hey, I think this is a good buy because here's my comps, here's the data, here's the property. This is what you need to do to it. And if you execute right, you can make up to 30% in 6 months, 60% annually. That's a good buy. And so it takes the decision making out of the clients because they're going, yeah, that's a good deal. I need to dig into this and take this serious. So once you've had the pro forma, it's all about how you present it and summarize the profitability to make that quick decision. I just kind of referenced this. But here's the deal. What's the total net profit? What's your cash on cash return that it calculates? What is your annualized cash on cash return? We always like to talk annually because if I have a deal that is maybe only making 10% on their money, but they can do it in 60 days, that means that client is still making a 60% return as the deal that we were just looking at. And so the deal, yes, it may be skinny, but it's fast. And the faster the deal, the more velocity in your money and the higher the return. And investors sometimes get deal goggles and they only look at it one way. Whereas we're going, hey, you're in and out of this thing real quick. You're making this quick hit. You're going to move on to your next deal. It's going to get their attention. Or as investors have buy boxes. For me, I try to make at least 30, 35% on my money in 6 months. If I have a year-long deal, I want to make 60 to 70% on my money. If it's a 2-month deal, I might take it down to 11, 12%. And so by speaking the same language and delivering it that way, it gets them to get outside their box. A lot of investors come into my office and they go, I want to make 100 grand on my deal or I'm not interested. I'm going, okay, well, what if you can make a 50% return on your money in 5 months? Well, that sounds good. Well, you're not going to make your 100 grand, but you'll make a 50% return. Does that work? And so being able to break through those objections, talk to them as an investment advisor helps them pull that trigger. Other stats you can pull to add to market confidence helps them make a decision. What's the sale price to list ratio? What are homes selling on the comps that you provided? What were they listed with? What did they sell for? What is that percentage ratio? Can you see a rise in that price? What's the average days on market? That tells the client how long they're going to have the property for. How long's the renovation when they're done with it? How long are they going to sell it for? This can affect that return. And then what are the inventory levels? If they're going to be selling into the market, are they going to be the only house for sale or are they going to be one of 20? These are things that investors want to know. And if you add it in the data up front, it helps remove those objections. As salespeople, our job is to lean into the objections and address them before they even ask the question. If we can do that, that's how we can get a quick reaction. All right, now that we looked at the pro forma and how we looked at those numbers and how we can present those numbers, how do we package the deal in a clean way? We talked about pulling the property information, pulling the comps, the scope of work, adding the pro forma, showing them the profitability. But we still need to make it digestible for the investors so they can go through it very quickly and then make that decision. So packaging your deal is essential. So the things that we always want to have is, again, answer all the questions when we're delivering to them. The property details. What's the address? If you can market that address, you guys, if it's confidential, don't put it in. Let the client call you, then you'll give it to them. But what's the property details? What's the bed bath count? What's the square footage? What's the lot size? The core information that establishes value. You want to add a link to the photos. What does it look like so the investor can look at it? The last thing they want to do is race out to a property that's terribly ugly. They had no idea what it looked like. We wasted their time. Then they don't want to go look at the next one quickly. We want a link to the pro forma. Why do we think this is a good deal? A link to the comps. Here's the information that we have provided you with to firm up that pro forma and show that it is a profitable transaction, or we're projecting that it is. And then always disclose what's the closing time frame, the terms, how quickly do we need to move on this deal? Because if the investor's not ready, we don't want them out wasting our time and kicking tires. We need to get on to the next investor. If this deal has to close in 5 days and someone can't do it, then there's no point to go look at the house. We need to find the person that can close it in 5 days. And then things to add in your deal I call them deal accelerators, things that get people's attention. Annualized cash on cash return. This is a 30% return in 6 months, which is 60%. That's a huge number. Sale to price list ratio, market conditions. We talked about that. Are things selling for above list, every house above? That shows that it's a healthy market, that it's easier to sell, that there's a lot of demand. Investors get excited by this. What's the average days on market? Are they 5 days? Are they 3 days? Are they 90 days? These are all things investors want to know, that they might get right to the finish line. They go, oh, this market's slow. I don't want to be in it. So it's always best to deliver that information up front. And then again, what's the inventory levels? What's the healthiness of the market? The point of the deal accelerators is to really help the investor interpret the market and not come up with an excuse later to not buy the deal. Additional information that is essential for an investor to know so they don't back out when you're delivering it to them. Provide all the information up front to make sure your sale sticks. We will always want to add in disclaimers. Hey, this is just rough analysis. That should be on everything that we're sending out. Hey, this is the projected profit, not actual. We want to let them know what's the terms of the contract. Are they buying it vacant? Are they buying it with a tenant in there? Is there an eviction going on? What's the closing date? Is all the trash remaining? They need to know the full picture of the story, because if these things come out later, it can crush your deal. A copy of the purchase and sale agreement, if you're working with a wholesaler or it's a deal you've already secured and the client's very, very interested, we're going to send in that purchase and sale, because again, they might love the deal, they might love the property, but they might hate the terms on it. And if they hate the terms, they might not buy it at all. What's going on with the title report? This is important for developers and builders. What's going on with it? Are there any encroachments? They want to look at, are there any setbacks? Are there any easements that take away from anything of that property that could jeopardize what their plan is? And then any disclosures that you have from the seller, you need to provide that up front with your deal package, or once they show interest, because again, you don't want them to jeopardize it with information they find out later. And all of a sudden they walk from the deal. They go, I liked it, but now I found out this, I don't like it anymore. A good example is, you guys, if I'm looking at a piece of dirt and I'm going, yes, I like the price, I like everything about it, send me the paperwork, I'm going to run my feasibility study. And then they get me the contract, I send out my feasibility guys, and they go, oh, well, the oil tank's leaking, and the seller already told the broker that, but they didn't relay that information. As an investor, I'm going to be very annoyed. I'm probably never going to call that broker again. But also, I just wasted time, wasted effort, and now I'm just going to go focus on a deal elsewhere. Or you as a broker, if you know that information, tell your client, and your client can give you information you need to get the deal to stick. If lack of information is where things get jeopardized. If someone told me, hey, this has a leaky oil tank up front, I can go, okay, well, we need to remediate that. We're going to need to get a fixed bid on that to know what the costs are. Or the deal's so good I can absorb the cost. But the problem is it's going to take me 12 months to remediate it. I like the property. I like the price. I don't care if the soil's dirty. We can clean it up. But the time is killing me. And if I can close on remediation of the property, I'm fully in. Then as a broker, I can go back to that seller, educate them, talk to them about it, and go, hey, look, we have a deal, but you got to wait for it. And this is why. That deal has a much higher likeliness to stick than the one where there's hidden surprises later. We want to avoid those hidden surprises in our underwriting. So always send out any disclosure in what they do. So now, you guys, what we're going to do is we're going to pull up a deal. All right. So here's a deal that we sent out to one of our clients, and they bought it. And now they're through the project. They're pending on market. They're doing very well. So this is an expensive house. They pulled the trigger very quickly. We only had to send this to one client because we knew the location it was in. We knew the budget. We didn't want to send it to a bunch of investors that didn't have the budget for it. And we were able to stick it very quickly on this project. So as you can see in this, you guys, it's not really fancy. It doesn't need to be full of all this marketing and all this fluff. It really just needs the core information. Now, if you want to brand it with your logos and all those things, it's not a bad thing because it brands your company. But we like to keep the fluff down and keep it very, very direct. And it feels a lot more personal too. It doesn't feel like spam. And so, as you can see, this gives a quick synopsis of the property. We have a picture of the front, so it grabs our attention immediately. This is what it looks like. It's a cosmetic flip in Woodinville. You know, if it's a major fixture, we'll say major fixture with huge discount in this location, picture of it. Our job as an investor is to provide all the information so we don't waste time and the client doesn't waste time. If the property's ugly and needs a lot of work, then we're sending that to them. Because again, you guys, wasted time is wasted dollars. If I go out there and drive and walk 10 clients through and none of them are interested because they didn't have the information, I just wasted a full day to find a new deal or to find the right buyer for this property. So first thing is they have a picture of it. They know what it looks like. They know what the status of the property is. Currently, it's occupied and when the closing date would be. If there's any terms on the agreement that need to be stated. This property, and this is a deal killer for a lot of investors, depending on what it is the possession after the investor buys is 30 days after closing. So the investor has to buy this property and wait for that person to move out, and it can slow down the deal. A lot of people won't buy those. They don't want the risk. They don't want the issue. It also depends on what kind of people are in there and whether they could be problematic. But again, it's right up front for the client. They know what the price is. The price on this property is $1.41 million. So the estimated rehab price at $260,000. We did that with our budget underwriting calc. We can put that in there for them. It summarizes it. If you don't know the number, it's okay. And just tell the client, I don't know exactly what the renovation costs are going to be, but here's the scope of work that needs to be done. And we know that if you do all these things, it's going to be worth an estimated, always estimated, guys, ARV of 2.1 million. Holding times, we're thinking it was going to be around 6 months of a project because it was more cosmetic fixer and then based on days on market. The profit was a 28.6% cash on cash return with $143,000 with the hard money. Now we can also present this as just a cash on cash return and take the leverage out. The reason we were able to put the hard money in is because we researched a local hard money lender in trust funding. They gave us the rates. We put it in. This is the total required down. This is what you can sell it for. We then give them some information just generally about the property. It's in a great school district. It's an 80s built home, cosmetic renovation, located in a prestigious farm community with pool, tennis courts, and clubhouse. The amenities. It has a 3-car garage, easy dining, winery, access to the wineries, right? So it's just the general information of why we like the house. Then it goes into the existing layout. It's in a year built of 1982. It's a 4-bedroom plus a den, 2.5 bath, building square footage at 2,960 on a 37,000 square foot lot. Then we go into the bullet points of what needs to be done. Landscaping cleanup. Existing wood windows need to be fixed with the panes need to be replaced. We need a new presidential roof due to HOA restrictions. That's what's handy about that title report. On the HOA, on the title report at an HOA, that HOA dictates what kind of roof you can put on. The investor needs to know that. A presidential roof costs almost 2x what a normal roof will cost. And so we gave that information to the investor up front by doing our due diligence so they can budget accordingly. It needs exterior paint, light fixtures, new front door, deck repairs. The interior needs interior paint, new doors, new millwork, new wide plank engineered hardwoods, new carpet and bedrooms. So hardwoods throughout with carpet in the bedrooms, a new kitchen update with designer appliances, countertops, cabinets, and we need to add a gas line because all the other houses had gas ranges, not electric. We need to enlarge the closet in the primary bedroom to get the value out of it. The closet's too small. Every comp we had walk-in closets. We need to increase that. We need to reconfigure the primary bathroom so it's more optimal for resale. We need to open up the kitchen and the dining room to create an open concept floor plan. Update all fixtures, add door to den so it can be created into a fifth bedroom. And then we need to do 3.5 full renovations on the bathroom. So we need to add one additional bath, tile the floors, new vanities, new tubs, toilets, trim out light fixtures, miscellaneous cleanup. That's what you need to do to achieve that value. Then the investor then can click on the photos of the property, going, okay, well, this is what you need to do to it. Let's see what the current condition is. So they have a link to the photos. So you can go, okay, well, what do we need to do here? What's the condition? As you can see, this is what it looks like now. It's just a kind of a tired, dated house. Investor can go through the photos, start looking at the bullet point, and they can start looking at their own rehab numbers. Now, from there, we then provide the sale comps for the property. Now, we told the clients we're 2.1 million. We gave them the bullet points of what needs to be done to the property to achieve the 2.1 million. We provided them with the specs of what the building details are. And then they have the photos to go through and look at all the condition. Now they can go look at that bullet points that we laid out and go, okay, well, what's selling in the area? They know what the price is. What are things selling for? So here was a house here that was 3,100 square feet. This one sold for $2.4 million. We put a value of 2.1. Why did we do that? I'll show you in a second. Now, this one was a little bit different style house. It had been fully updated, but it also had this little guest house over here. So if a client really wanted to add the 2.4 million, they would need to build a little casita here, which could be 100 grand or so and take some time. We didn't feel it was worth it. This is a very high caliber renovation. They can go through the photos. They can look at it. It's got custom stone. It's got upgrade because these are expensive floors. It's got a very nice kitchen in it. And they can see what the finish level is to get it to that 2.4 million. They also then can go to the other comps that have sold in the area. Here is one that was sold for 2.1, closer to our value. They can see the bedrooms and the bathroom square footage. They can see it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2.5. We're going to be one additional bath. It was a slightly bigger house. It was 500 square feet with a 3-car garage, and it was listed for 1.99, sold for 2.1, so it sold for 6.5% over, and they can go through the condition. Now, things that we're notating is, why did we come up with a value that's, our house is a little bit smaller and we're saying it's worth the same? Well, we have a comp that's around the same size with the additional and a very, very high-end renovation that we're not proposing. This sold for 2.4 to 2.5. Then we have a house that's it's clean, but it's a little bit more dated. You got carpet in all the dining room, not optimal for resale. These cabinets here are the original cabinets that have countertops on them. And our house is just in a little bit too rough a shape to do more of a dust up. So we're replacing everything. And so when we're talking to the client, we're saying, hey, this one was somewhat updated. It's a little bit bigger. It sold for 6.5% over. And we're going to be substantially more upgraded with our kitchens, our bathrooms. It's going to be a full redo and update, whereas this is more of a dust up. Like the original, like this bathroom looked very similar to what we had now, just with a little bit of extra tile. We're going to be a full replacement. So we're going to be a nicer product, which the comp that was smaller showed that would get a premium. And we're putting it at the same value for the smaller square footage. And so we give the investor has all the information based on our email. And now they can make a quick decision because they can go over to this flip calculator. This is the same one, just a little bit different version with logos. And now they can use the flip calculator and go, okay, well, what does this look like if I pay cash for it? If I use hard money, here's the evaluation. Well, if I pay cash for it, I'm making a 15% return. If I do a construction loan with 25% down, it's a 28.6% return. And they can look at all those returns, make the decision quickly. But as an investor, I don't have a whole lot of questions about this. I know what it is. I know what it looks like. I have the comps that it could get fixed up to, showing me the range in values. I have a rough budget, and I have a performance that shows me the estimated profit. Based on this, I can look at this very quickly and make a decision. And so the cleaner your deal is packaged, it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be this crazy marketing. It needs to be concise. And concise will get you a better project and a better deal. So our email packages aren't the fanciest. They don't need to be. They don't need a bunch of logos on them. They don't need what they need to. We might throw a logo on here and there. But the most important thing is we've laid out the information in a cohesive way for the investor to make a decision. Here's what it looks like. Here's what you need to do to it. Here's the pictures. You can go through it. Here's the comps that establish the scope of work gets us there with all the updates. And then here is an estimated profit calculator that shows you how it's profitable. And these are the things that get you a quick decision. This is how you get a deal done quickly and how you can get them to transact. And so you guys on the underwriting, week 3, we covered a lot, right? How to get deal flow, how to talk to those people, how to add value on the business relationships, get to know your clients, reverse engineer how you're fishing out for those deals. You'll get a higher conversion rate. You don't want to treat people like a transaction. Our job isn't just to throw out deals and see what mud sticks. It's about identifying the client, what they want, what they're high demand for, marketing for that project, looking for that project, and then delivering it to them in a very cohesive information layout with the actual facts of it. The information that you provide upfront will make your deal stick solid and get a quick decision. Lack of information causes confusion. They don't make the decision. Then you are stuck with an issue and a deal that they just already made up their mind is not at that point. They're moving on. Do the due diligence, lay it out for them. Don't take information, just pass it on. Your job as the broker is to give them their professional opinion. If you're not giving them that opinion based on facts, there's not a lot of use for you. And so lay out the information, make it easy for the client to understand, listen to what their goals are, and make sure they align, then send them the project. And don't forget, you guys, as you're looking for that deal flow, reverse prospect for deals. Don't throw mud at the wall. As you're trying to find deals, where is the opening in these deals? What is giving you the most amount of inventory? What are your clients looking for? And how can you go reverse and find those? That's how you get higher conversion rates in any type of market. And so, again, it's all about getting the information, laying that cohesively, answering the questions before they're there, and then you can get the transaction. So in week 4, you guys, we are going to be covering building your business. In week 1, we talked about the general information about being a broker, who the players are, what the key terms are, things that you need to get familiar with to understand their language. In week 2, we talked about how to find investors, how to qualify them, how to narrow their buy box a little bit, how to find the right ones to where you can do the most amount of transactions, how to have the right conversations to get their highest wants will get you the highest offers. In week 3, we covered the different types of deal flow that you can chase, who to talk to, how to establish those relationships, how to take that information, underwrite it, and deliver it to the client so they can make a quick decision. Now it's about how do we make this work as a business to where we're not just out grabbing things and sending things off, and how do we systemize it? And that's what we're going to be talking about, building your business in week 4. What kind of paperwork do we need to protect our business with disclaimers and disclosures? What kind of list back agreements do we need to secure that pipeline for listings? What kind of CRMs do we use to organize the information, the people, so we can transact and stay organized as salespeople to get more deals done? So I'll see you guys on week 4. We're going to talk about building out your business. And I hope you enjoyed your little extra bonus. And don't forget, watch Project Flip. It gets very granular in the underwriting, guys. It puts you in the investor seat. The more you understand their language, the more deals you will get done.